Hello and welcome to Chapter 5. Today we're going to talk about small business, entrepreneurship, and franchising. Have you ever wanted to own your own business? A lot of people do. And this chart shows the percent of people that would rather work for themselves. And you can see in the United States, it's very high since we're a very independent thinking people. Do you wonder if you have what it takes to start your own business? Um, or what do people do that start businesses? These are some of the questions that I'd like to talk about today. So an entrepreneur is just someone with the desire to create a new business. And we say desire because you have to be passionate about it because it's a lot of work to create and start your own business. So what are some reasons why people want to start their own businesses? People feel that they can have greater financial success. They can make more money not working for someone else. All the profit goes to them. A lot of independence, people that don't like to work for someone else or want to be independent. Lots of flexibility since you're your own boss. Very challenging. If you like a challenge, this would be great. And lastly, survival. And with the economic downturn a few years ago, a lot of people went into entrepreneurship and starting their own ventures because they lost their jobs in a matter of survival. So that really took an upturn in the last few years. So, how old is the average entrepreneur? I thought this was really interesting that almost 50% of entrepreneurs are under the age of 34, with 65% being under the age of 40. So you can see where if you're thinking about this, you're not alone. You know, your age group is the one that is definitely interested in entrepreneurship. So to be an entrepreneur, what kind of qualities do you need to have? What does it take? I think this is a great summary of that. You have to have a vision. You have to have some idea of something innovative or something new or different that you can provide, that serves a need. You certainly need a lot of energy because it's a lot of work. You have to be very energetic. You have to have a tolerance of uncertainty because you may not be getting a paycheck every week, or it may not be the same amount every week. Things can happen, and when things happen, you're it. You have to handle that. You have to be self-reliant because it is yourself. You have to be able to do a lot of different things. You wear a lot of different hats. It requires a great deal of confidence. You have to have a tolerance of failure, meaning that things are going to go wrong, but that's how you learn. You learn from things going wrong, and you have to have an attitude that it's okay. I know what to do now. So you learn from those failures. So you talk about entrepreneurship, and we think of some of the entrepreneurs that have been around in the past, really dramatically changed the world. Henry Ford, Walt Disney, Bill Gates, my favorite, Martha Stewart, Steve Jobs. I'm sure you can think of many others, Oprah Winfrey. For instance, I found this interesting because I love IKEA. If you've ever been to the IKEA store. But Ingvar Kamprad is the IKEA founder, and they say that they believe he's now the richest man in the world. Okay, very interesting. He has 200 stores, 31 countries, 75,000 people work for IKEA, and $12 billion in sales. So that's a pretty successful entrepreneur. Okay. So small business is one that's independently owned and operated for profit and is not dominant in its field. Okay, and 99% of employer firms fall under this category of small business, and they employ about half of all private sector employees. Okay, so a lot of people work for small businesses. And small businesses are very important in the economy because they do create new jobs. I told you how a lot of people are going into entrepreneurship and owning a small business, and they're hiring people. Also fuels innovation. And in the book, it explains how many of the inventions throughout history were made by entrepreneurs and small businesses. Okay, and they also help the economy by vitalizing inner cities. If entrepreneurs are opening new shops and services in inner cities, it's going to help with the economy. So small businesses is important and fills a lot of needs. It provides competition because if large companies have no competition, it they won't become more efficient, and we won't see the supply and demand bringing prices down. So it brings prices down for us. It also meets the needs of smaller groups because they can supply specialized things that larger businesses can't. On a large scale, they can do things smaller and be more aware of customer needs. So there's some advantages and disadvantages. If you own a small business, you can develop personal relationships with your customers. You can change quickly versus a large business, and a lot of independence, like we talked about. But some disadvantages, it's difficult to enter new markets, especially in the book talked about manufacturing, how difficult that would be. There's a lot of international competition, and there's a really high risk of failure, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Okay, and it's hard to raise money sometimes when you're just starting out. So talk about some opportunities and threats. Some opportunities for small business, they can take advantage of market niches, and what this means is like small populations in the market that they can come in and quickly provide a product or service to that market, much more so than a large company can. And they provide personal service, okay, and generally have lower costs. And with the technology nowadays, small business is able to leverage that and compete nicely with larger companies. However, there are some threats. There's a high risk of failure with small businesses. Oftentimes, a business owner lacks knowledge and experience, especially with how to manage a business. They may know about the product or service, but managing a business can be difficult. It can be hard to get money. You can have regulations, government regulations, and that sort of thing. So I found this really interesting. This shows that as the years go on, more and more small businesses can't keep going. They're not viable. So by the 5th year, only about 38% of business startups are still in business. Okay, and with the main reason being just the owner's inability to manage. So if you want to start a small business, there are 3 different ways that a small business owner can launch a business. They can start it from scratch, from nothing. They can buy an established business or buy a franchise, which we've talked a lot in the last few classes about franchises. So starting a business from scratch has a lot of advantages. It's your idea, it's your structure. You get to make all the decisions, and you don't have to deal with some past history. But the con is also, it is all you, so there's a lot of pressure. It's hard to get funding, that sort of thing. It takes time, to build up a business from the ground up. If you buy an established business, everything's in place. The policies and procedures and structures, relationships, financing is easier, especially if it's a viable, profitable business. However, you're working with someone else's idea, and that may not be what you're passionate about. You have to do what interests you and what you're passionate about. You also inherit whatever bad things were going on in the business. There's some reason they sold it, and there could be some things there that you have to deal with or handle that you don't necessarily like. Okay, with a franchise, you're partnering with something established, a lot of name brand recognition. You can get assistance, there's a low failure rate. However, it's not being real creative. If you have a passion for your own ideas and that sort of thing, franchise won't really fill that. It's tied to the national brand's mistakes. If one Subway store has a horrible incident with food poisoning, that is going to carry forward to the other stores. Okay, and lastly, it costs a lot of money to buy a franchise and to keep it going with royalties. So how can you do this? There's a lot of ways and help. The Small Business Administration, and the book talks a lot about that, helps businesses. And I just heard yesterday on the news that they're now offering a special program for returning veterans that want to start businesses. You can gain experience by working somewhere in the same sort of a situation. Good example, I have Ryan Seacrest, who we all know from American Idol and other stuff. He got started by going to Merv Griffin. He was a producer at the time, very well known, and saying, "I'll work for you for free. Just show me what you do. Teach me. I want to learn." So he went out and got that experience without being paid, just so he could learn. Okay. Small business also needs a business plan. Okay, a business plan is very essential, especially if you want to get money, if you go to the bank and want to get money. It's also good to have a strategic plan and kind of see, how are things going in relation to that plan, and to plan out your business. So it has to talk about the goals and the cost, and what vision is it that you have. And these are some of the parts of the business plan. Okay, summaries, and you have to have your marketing strategy, how you're going to operate, what people do you need, what are your financial projections, profit and loss, and this is what you would then take to a lender, a bank or someone who is interested in your business to try to get funding. So it's a critical document for any small business. So where do small businesses get their money? It comes mainly from personal savings, as you can see from this chart. Personal savings, and then borrowing money from friends and relatives. Then third, followed by banks as well. Okay, but mainly it's your own money, because it's hard to get funding from other sources, especially if it's a new idea or a new startup. Okay, so a franchise, as we said, is just where you have a license to operate a business. Okay, and we talked a lot about that, but here's something else I found really interesting, is the concept of dual branded franchises. And this is where two franchises get together and put their products with each other to increase business. And this example is McDonald's combining with Texaco. Okay, so you go, it's kind of like a one-stop thing. You go to the gas station, you can, get your dinner, especially when you're on the road traveling. It's pretty nice just to go to one place. Another concept like this is co-branding. Things like KFC and Taco Bell, they're both owned by Yum Brands. It's their parent company, but their individual franchises, KFC and Taco Bell, sometimes go in together. So you can go in the same store. And that increases efficiency. If you think about it, you don't have to pay overhead for two stores, and you can train the personnel to provide both product lines. So franchising is less of a risk, okay, and 94% of owners say they're successful. Okay, so less of a risk than just kind of going it on your own, but then you give up your independence, and maybe that doesn't work for you. Okay, those are the main ideas from Chapter 5. I hope you found it interesting, and I hope that you do start your own business someday. Thanks.